He's got a radio control in this thing.
Yeah, for the parachute.
Ranges are open.
You forgot D3.
Oops, sorry.
Not yet. We're going with mine.
Do you want to set up the cameras? You going?
I don't have a card for D3.
It's been a while. Hi, Tom. Have you gotten any bigger yet? Come on. Get bigger.
I don't have a card.
Huh? I gave it to you over there. Nice up.
That was not.
I handed it to you over there before I came out. No, Jen signed off on it.
Yeah, but there's one she did.
Yeah, I gave it to you before I walked out. Dog, you said it on the t-shirts. I handed it to you.
That's nice. No crosswind at all out there. Okay, what was the airspace today?
8,000 like usual. 8. But we do hear an airplane, so hold dog.
Oh, who cares?
The FAA cares. That's who. Let him know. Yeah, there he is. Okay.
I had my ADSB mic. If I can find out.
He's outside of the radius.
Don't do that, Brian! Brian's going around in circles on me.
Got a heads up here. Oh, you're fine. Watch out in the crowd back there.
Heads up!
Please, sir. Oh, it's gonna hit me.
Brian Houghton steering that right into the crowd.
Yeah.
Perfect, man. Wow.
And we're live! Welcome to another edition of RockSim Live. My name is Tim Van Milligan. I need to take a... I just lost the lid to my... If you lose the lid, there's a greater chance of spilling water on your computer. So I keep the lid around everywhere I go. This is RockSim Live. This is where we talk about RockSim software and how to use it. And all of a sudden, I got the chat going on over here, and all of a sudden people are getting chatty. Cool. If you have a question about RockSim, go ahead and put it in the chat, and that's what we'll talk about today, is what you want to talk about. This is guided by you, so your questions are going to be what this episode is going to be about. We have Art Applewhite here, Johan de Sloper from the Netherlands. Art is from Texas. Rick DeFosses from New Hampshire. Terry Wheelock. He says, "Fly me to the Earth. I'm on the moon." Rick says, "I stuck the landing of my Mega Lander last weekend. It's a great rocket." We have Low Budget Bob. That's a new name I haven't seen before. Welcome, Low Budget Bob. And we have David Fountain. What's up, everyone? He's from Atlanta, Georgia. So if you're just joining in, go ahead and say hello, say where you're from. We'd like to recognize you and thank you for being here. Let me show you my screen. What am I working on today? I've been working on, the last few weeks, I've been working on the gliding parachute. And here's the big announcement. The big announcement is that we're going to start selling them on Tuesday morning, as soon as we come in. That's what it looks like. That's the smallest one that looks like. You take this part from here up and you attach it to your rocket, so it can be used on any rocket that it will fit into. This little piece right here is BT-70 size, so you're going to need to find a tube that will fit in, mostly BT-80 or larger. I'm looking at my screen over here, and I just see my head is getting cut off. I forgot to adjust that today. There we go. All right, now my head's up. So now when I say BT-80 size, I can show it with my hands. Yeah, so the cool thing about this is the gliding parachute. So you control where it's going to land. So if you're tired of chasing rockets, tired of losing rockets, tired of them going for a long way and you can't see them anymore, and you want to bring them home, this is a new option. It's better than dual deployment because dual deployment still drifts with the wind. This you can kind of penetrate into the wind. Depending on how windy it is. Obviously we're not going to be able to penetrate a 10-mile-an-hour wind, but it's certainly better than walking a long ways. And if you want, you can still use it with dual deployment. You just replace this parachute for a regular round or octagon parachute, and as soon as it comes out, then you got control and you can start bringing it home. So I've been working on that. Let me close out my mail because that's jumping up and down here. So this is a twin keel Regalo parachute. It has a separator and then the controller. And then you provide the RC receiver and transmitter, just like a regular airplane RC. It's a single channel. You can only go left or right. So it's very forgiving. With a regular RC airplane, if you turn the wrong way, you could easily crash. This, because it's a parachute, it's still going to come down at the same rate It's just, you know, now you only control left or right. And if you screw up and go left when you wanted to go right, it's not going to be the end of the world. It's going to drift off a little bit to the left, but you'll still get it back. So if you want to learn RC and how to control something, this is a pretty good product for that as well. How they're designated is like when I say a 24-inch parachute, the 24 inches is from the bottom to the apex point out here. This is kind of looking from the top down. Yeah. And there's 3 sizes, a 24, 28, and a 32. And I'm finding out, we have a chart on this webpage for what size you need based on how much the rocket weighs. And I think it's a little bit light because I flew a medium-sized parachute and I almost thermaled it away. I did get it back. It didn't, when they're going up, they're hard to control. You want to control them when they're coming down. So basically my rocket was too light, and it was well over 600 grams. So it was not a lightweight rocket, and so it was going up. But anyway, so that's the big news as far as what's coming at Apogee. But we're here to talk about RockSim. So if you're interested in RockSim, if you go to the home page, and then you scroll down here, there's the RockSim Training Live. That's what we're doing right now. And this will, if you click on that image, it'll take you to our archive page. And these show you all the past episodes and what we talked about. Gives you a YouTube link as well as a timestamp in the YouTube link so you can go directly to that topic. It's a great way of finding out, you know, because when we talk here, we go in depth. So it's a lot more information than you'd get any other place. So let me look over here in the comments, see if there's any questions so far. We have Terry Wheelock says he built an SR-72. What's an SR-72, you might ask? So if you go to the Apogee website and you go to the search bar, you type in SR-72. Here it is, SR-72 Darkbird, and you click on that and I'll give you a better image of what it looks like. So it looks like an SR-71, but it's an SR-72, so it's one better. That's where we got the name. It is a rocket glider, a boost glider actually, so that's kind of what it looks like on the pad. That's how big it is. It's not a big glider, but when it glides, it's kind of cool. Low Budget Bob says, is this RC controlled? He's talking about the RC gliding parachute, and the answer is yes, it is RC controlled. Let me go back to that page. History, gliding parachute system. I did a video, and I don't think this video is hidden right now, so you may not be able to see it. But this is an introduction to the experiment. Scroll here. This about 5 years ago. A video where it looks creating like flying, the parachute was the biggest challenge. But we also had to create the controller, which is this right here, which consists of a servo that pulls on the lines of the parachute, plus a battery, right about here, a board, which is a fiberglass board. As you can see from the video, this works pretty good. It is experimental, so there are some things that you are going to have to experiment on your own. So this is not a product for everybody. But the purpose of this is you know, if you see the clouds to get the rocket to land as close to the launch pad as possible. Right here. So in the past we had dual deployment, so you could launch your rocket and it limited the amount of drift. The problem with dual deployment in all parachutes, other than the gliding parachutes, is they drift with the wind. So no matter which way the wind is blowing, that's the way the rocket's going to land. With the gliding parachute system, since we can control it, we can steer it into the wind and allow it to come a lot closer to the pad than other methods. So it comes in 3
2.6
sizes. This is our small
maybe
parachute.
3
this
inches.
is a 24-inch
largest
parachute.
one is
Now that's
definitely a 4-inch
measured
diameter
differently
rocket,
from
'cause
a
it
regular
comes
round
down
parachute.
really
That's
slow.
measured along the keel
because they
length
glide,
to an imaginary point.
you actually
out
have
in the tip
lift
where everything
retarding
converges.
the fall.
These
as well as
parachutes are a
drag,
lot more
so
efficient
they're a lot
than a round
more
parachute.
efficient.
Because in a round parachute or a
They
drag
have a
producing
lift to
parachute,
drag ratio.
you only have
from
the drag
from the theory
retarding
of about
the
3,
descent of the rocket.
which isn't
with a gliding
particularly
parachute.
good when you're
we
comparing it to an
also
airplane.
have lift.
But when you're
So these
comparing it to
parachutes
a regular
can be
parachute,
up to
which has
9
0,
times more efficient than a parachute that
pretty
just
good.
comes down vertically. So you can use
Cool.
a
So
lot
we have
smaller of a
Rosa. I
parachute
think
for a
she's from
heavier
Ottawa,
payload
or
of
Rosa,
your
or it's a
rocket.
he, I'm not sure.
So this is the
We have
24-inch.
Jeff Nettleton,
We have a
He's from
28-inch, which is this one
Lackawanna?
right here.
Kansas.
And then finally we have the
And
32-inch, which
low
is our
budget
biggest one right here.
We have both audios.
All of these are
Oh,
pretty
we have
much the
audio
same.
going on from
They can
there.
all-
I'm sorry. Let me stop that. Yeah, so that's the gliding parachute. But we're here to talk about RockSim, and I got no RockSim questions yet. So give me a RockSim question, or otherwise I can continue to talk about the gliding parachute. They're a lot of fun. Yeah. If you want to learn about RockSim, go to the how-to and guides on our webpage, then come down here to software. There's RockSim video tutorials. There's loading motors into RockSim. If for some reason, some weird, on occasion, like 1 out of like 50 people have this problem where all of a sudden their motors disappear. So we have a procedure for putting them back into RockSim. RockSim Live Training, I just showed you. There's RockSim Pro video tutorials. There's the version history. We just released, it was like last week, Tuesday, we released version 10.5 on RockSim. So there were some bug fixes and some new features. We talked about that last week. And there's also system requirements, you know, in case you want to know if you got an older operating system, if you can still run RockSim. Art Applewhite says, Arc rocket have to separate the payload from the motor. How do you get accurate descent time for the payload? Okay. So that's a good RockSim question. We can answer. Somebody asked me something similar this past week. You basically you want to take a rocket and you want it to come down in 2 pieces, like a nose cone, like an egg lofter, and then a body tube section with the fins on its own parachute. So they come down separately. And he wants to know, how do you get an accurate descent time for the payload? Okay, so let's try this. Let's open up a RockSim design. I'm going to go to File, Open. I'll use the Research Express. Click Open there. Come on, open up. Okay, so here's the Research Express. It's a single stage rocket, but let's say this top part right here, we got a nose cone and this payload tube, and then down here we have the regular tube and the fins. And we can see that if you click on the parts, it highlights them, and then if you go to the Rocket Design Components tab, it will highlight the part you just clicked on, and that's how I can tell that this is a payload tube. So first we have to set this up as coming down in 2 parts. And so right now it's coming down as 1 part, just the sustainer. And in this body tube here, we have a parachute loaded in there. So that's our parachute right now. So we're going to need to put in another parachute, and then we're going to need to separate it. And basically, we need to figure out a way to tell RockSim that it's going to come down in 2 pieces. Because by default, it always comes down in just 1 piece. And so we have to trick it. But it's an easy trick. So basically, in order to have two parts coming down, we got to have RockSim think it's a two-stage rocket. So what we're going to do is going to set it up as a two-stage rocket so we can track both parts. And to do that, right now we only have a one-stage rocket. So I only have the sustainer, which is the upper part of the rocket. To turn it into a two-stage rocket, what the conversation that I had this past week with somebody was, they were going to this view icon right here that shows you, different views, the first stage, the second stage, the third stage. And they thought that that was how you change it from a single stage rocket to a two-stage rocket. But you don't do it here. This just controls the view. It doesn't control the components in the rocket. That's done on the Rocket Design Attributes tab right up here. So we'll click on that, and you can see the number of stages. Right now we have it set up as a single stage rocket. So from here, from this menu, I'm going to turn it into a two-stage rocket. So come on. So I'm going to select two-stage rocket. And see down here, now it's set up as a two-stage rocket, but nothing happens down here because there's no parts in it yet. So now we have to start adding parts. So if I go back to the design components, which are the component parts of the rocket, that's where we're going to add them. And if I collapse this, now you'll see that we have a sustainer and a booster. So now we need to start adding parts to this booster, but we don't really want to add any new parts down here because that would throw off the weight of everything, and then we're not going to get an accurate descent or an accurate going up. So what we're going to do is we're going to take these parts here and we're just going to move them around. So I want to take like everything from the bottom of this payload tube here, so from here backwards, and then I want to put that in the booster section. So I can do that pretty easy just doing a copy and paste. So I'm going to find that tube. So I'm going to click on it, and it found the tube here. So I'm going to click on the tube here, and now I can either go to the edit menu and do a copy from here, or I can, with my mouse, I can do a right click on the right hand button of the mouse, do a right click, and it brings up this menu, and I can do a copy. So I'm going to copy all these components, and I'm going to delete them, but I don't want to delete them until I pasted them somewhere else. I'll just come back and delete them in here in a second. So now I want to paste them onto the booster. So I have to highlight the booster and then either go back to the edit and paste, or right click on the booster. Come on. Doesn't want to let me paste there. I'll just do it here then. Paste. Okay, so now it pasted those components here on the booster, but it's not showing them here yet. Well, that's because I'm only showing the first stage. So I'm going to click this button and then show both the first and the second stage. And so now you see there's new components here. So let me zoom out a little bit. So now you can see we got a first and a second stage. So now these components here are redundant. So I'm going to go back and delete those. And so that was this body tube right there. And I'm going to do a delete over here, or I can do a right click and cut or delete. The difference between a cut and a delete is a cut will copy them into the clipboard, where a delete just deletes them. So you don't copy them. So I'm going to just hit delete. It's going to ask, do I really want to delete? And I'm going to say yes. So when I do that, now it looks like we're back to the original rocket, which is what we wanted. But it's actually set up as a two-stage rocket. Okay, so now we got to do one more trick to do. Well, first we need a parachute in here. So I'm going to put a parachute into the payload bay, but I'm actually going to put it like right next to this other one here because it's going to be its weight on the way up is going to be down here. So I'm going to put in a parachute. And I'll just put in an 18-inch parachute stage or part. And it's not showing the parachute. Well, actually, I'm pretty sure the parachute's on the inside. So if we just look at a 2D, we can see the parachute right here. So now we need to change the location, but I want to put it in the booster stage. So I'm going to select two-stage rocket, and then I'm going to go to the General tab, and then I'm going to slide the location backwards until it gets into the booster stage. So this is as far as I can go with the slider, 5.5 inches, and it puts it right back here. But I want to put it back here, so I need to type in a number. So let's put it at 7 inches. Okay, so I put it right there, right about where we wanted it. That's good. And we'll click OK. So now we got a parachute in both stages. Can't see my parachute. Let me click on here. There it is. So there's the parachute for the upper stage. All right, so now to run this as a simulation as a two-stage rocket, see what happens is RockSim needs to know when the two parts are going to separate. And we do that with the delay and the ejection charge of the booster motor. But we may also need a motor in the upper stage, but we don't want it to be a real motor. We want it to be a fake. We're just going to trick it to thinking there's a motor in there. And that allows it to track the trajectory of the rocket. So let's first try to run a simulation just as it is and see how it's set up. So first I'm going to do a save as. I'm going to save this to my desktop just so I don't lose it. Okay, so it's on my desktop. Okay, so now we're going to go prepare for launch, which is this button right up here. Click on that. It says in order to run simulations, it's at least one body tube in each stage needs to be designated as a motor mount. So I need to designate a tube in the upper stage as a motor mount. So I'm going to say yes here. And I have a payload tube, a body tube, and an engine mount tube in this rocket. And I think we're going to use that payload tube, which was this one up here. And we'll click OK. And okay, so now it's looking for motors in the rocket. And you might notice that we lost our decals right here. And I think we lost them because when I saved it to the desktop, I lost the link to the decals, because now they're no longer associated with this rocket. They're associated with the old name. So the decals had the name Research Express, where on this new one, it's Research Express 2-stage. So we changed the names, so I lost my decals. So don't get too hung up about that. So right now, here's our booster stage. Let's put a C6-5 motor in that. So here's the C6-5. Click OK. So it's loaded in the booster stage. The upper stage doesn't have anything right now. Let's go to the flight events. Okay, so we have the booster stage has a parachute and the sustainer has a parachute. So right now the booster stage is set at stage separation. So right now it's set up with the C6-5. Stage separation occurs at 5 seconds after the motor burns out, which is what we want, because if on a regular rocket, that's, on a single stage rocket, that's where it would be, like a C6-5. And so now the parachute for the sustainer is also set to deploy at maximum ejection delay, but I don't have a motor in it, so we can't use that because it's going to look for a motor delay. So let's set it at deploy at Apogee, and let's see what happens. I'm not sure what's going to happen, but we'll take a look. Starting state, let's take a look at that. We're 36-inch launch rod, launching 0 degrees from vertical, so that's straight up. Launch conditions, it's 700 feet above sea level, and we got a slight wind of 6 miles an hour. And let's look at the flight profile and see what it looks like. Okay, so running the simulation, and it said it went 692 feet. So here's the rocket sitting on the pad, and we can see a simulation, and what we're going to be looking for is 2 parachutes coming down. So rocket takes off. It's going up. Okay, so we have 2 parts coming down, the red part and the green part. And they're coming down both about the same speed, you can't tell. The red part is coming down just a little bit faster, if that's the booster or the sustainer. Let's speed it up and see. So it's the booster stage that's coming down first, but they're both coming down fairly slow. So that tells me that this simulation actually did work. Although it's not showing a parachute in that lower stage. So if you want to see a parachute, you can go to the preferences right here, click on that, and go to rocket image, and we're going to create images of this rocket, and I need to know where this is going to save this. Okay, so I don't like where it's going to save that, so let's put it in a different folder. I think I'll throw it on the desktop in a new folder, and I'll call this Research Express Images. I'll create a new folder, and we're going to say save them in there. And it's calling this an Avion design. Let's call it Research Express. I'll just research. All right, so now let's generate the image data. Oh boy, it's going to be like really tiny. Cancel that. Let's make this 500 by 500. Let's see what happens. Generate rocket data. Oh, 256 is the max. Okay, but it's still kind of small. That's the sustainer stage, just tumbling without a parachute. This is both stages together. It's got to draw the picture of the rocket so it can put it down here. And it saves these as sprites. There's that part again. I'm not sure why it's doing it a second time. It's not showing me a parachute. There's the booster stage by itself. Again, no parachute. I should see a parachute. I'll do this in the launch visualizer. The launch visualizer is faster and it just looks better. But most people have RockSim, so that's why we're doing it here in the RockSim. Oh, that's interesting. So that's the sustainer with the parachute in the lower stage. Sure is taking a long time. All right. Okay, so it did it. So let's click OK. So now it's going to redraw the scene with the rocket right here. So there's our rocket, and the rocket takes off. these arrows are force vectors. So we're seeing drag and thrust. Not seeing the two separate, oh, there they are. So here's the two separate stages, but I'm not seeing the parachutes. Okay, I click cancel there. But it is generating the data. And so Art's question was, how do you know, or how do you make it accurate? So first we need a starting point, and the starting point, we're going to look at the graphs. So right now I want to see time versus velocity. So as it comes down, we want to see the velocity. I think we also want to see the altitude. Altitude. Let's see, is there anything else that we might want to see? So the velocity is going to be pink and the altitude is going to be black. And we'll end this at the end of the data. And let me see. Okay, so if we want to chart the booster, see what we're charting here is always the upper stage. If you want to see the booster, you can see the booster's velocity as well, like booster 2 velocity or booster 1. I'm not sure which one it's going to be. I think it's booster 1. And we'll make that one a different color. We'll make it orange. Click OK, and then plot the graph. Okay, so we're not seeing any orange line for booster 1. So let's go back here and make it booster 2. This is how we find out what's going on. Plot the graph. Okay, so now we have booster 2. Okay, so this orange line right there is the velocity for booster 2. The pink line is the velocity for the sustainer. And it's like really close. I have to really zoom in to see that there's a difference between the velocity for this booster and the velocity for the sustainer, because they both have parachutes and they must be close enough in size that they're getting the same descent rate. So if I now, we want to know, can we improve the accuracy? Well, first we need to know what the descent rate is of this upper stage with its current parachute, and then we need to actually make some drop tests to figure out what the true drop speed is, and then adjust the size of the parachute to match that drop rate. So let's say I did that. So you would get the current drop rate from this graph right here, the velocity graph, and that is this line, and it's the pink line. So we're dropping around 9 miles per hour. So I'm looking at the pink line, and it intersects right here. It's just a hair under 9 miles an hour. The booster stage, which is the fins, fall a little bit faster. It's about 9.5 miles per hour. Okay, so now I know the drop rate of the sustainer. So let's say that it was actually coming down faster at 15 miles an hour. So 15 would be way up here. So I need to shrink my parachute down. So I am going to go to the parachute. See, this parachute's the booster stage parachute. So I'm going to change the name to booster stage parachute so we can tell them apart more easily. And this one here is the sustainer stage parachute. So we had it set at 18-inch diameter, 17.99. Let's make that like 8 inches in diameter. And I didn't see if anything changed. Let me change this back to 18. What I'm looking for is the descent rate. So at 18, hit tab, we have 7.1 miles per hour. And at 8, it jumped all the way up to 15, which is pretty close. So it's going to be, that's a little bit too fast. That's almost 16, so it needs to be a little bit bigger. So we'll go 9 inches, hit tab. Now we're a little bit too fast or too slow. So maybe it's like 8.5 inches in diameter. Yeah, it's pretty close. Click OK. And so now if we run this simulation again, this upper part should fall a lot faster. So let's go to prepare for launch again and flight profile. And we're basically doing that same simulation, and we got the same altitude, but this time the upper part should land a lot faster. And I'm just going to speed things along by grabbing the slider bar. Okay, so now you can see, so here's that upper part of the rocket, and indeed it is falling a lot faster than the booster part. And so this is already landed. The booster part is still going down, and it's going to take a lot longer. So now we need to find out, when does that one hit the ground? Well, there's 2 ways to do it. One is you can just use the slider bar and get an approximation. So right there is when it stopped moving. So that's about 38.45 seconds. If I click on the details here, I can look at my velocity. Right here it says 0 miles per hour because it's already touched down on the ground. So if I back it up until where there's actually velocity, so right now at 38.04 seconds, we still have velocity at 16 miles. And then at 38.1, 38.2, we drop down to 0. So I would say that's my time that it took the sustainer stage to land. But the question was, all of a sudden there's a lot more questions. How do you get an accurate descent time for the payload? Well, you can use the RockSim to get an approximation like we did. So if I went to the parachute, the way I have it set up now, if I go to the sustainer parachute, with this diameter and that mass, which should be the mass of this part right here, that should be the descent rate right here. It's 15.03. We're close. It's in actuality, it was going down a little bit faster. But this is just an approximation until you actually run the simulation. So what you would do is just, so I can get an approximation of the descent rate right here. And if I needed to be more accurate, I'm going to need to do drop tests. Take the parachute up to a high level with a stopwatch and a known distance, and drop it and measure how long it takes to get to the ground. Divide the altitude that you dropped it from by the time, and that will give you a descent rate in feet per second, or whatever units you're using, and you can do the conversion to get it to miles per hour. Or you can come over here and say, what's that in feet per second? That's 22 feet per second. So hopefully, Art, that answered your question. That was a really good question.
Let's see what else we got here. Low budget Bob. I have a few RockSim files, but they show no motor recommendations. How do you add or figure out what motors are right? And he says the rocket he works on is the Nuke Pro Max is one of the files. So let's go to the Apogee website. Type in Nuke. I think that's one that we sell. Nuke Pro Max. There it is right there. So this is the file. This is what the rocket looks like. That's how big it is. And if you go down here to RockSim file, you can download it. But I believe it's already in the database of RockSim since that's an older kit. So if I go to file and RockSim designs. Let me sort this by, I'm looking for a lock Nuke Pro Max. It's not in there, but that doesn't mean it's not there. Let me go to my Rocket Applications folder. RockSim 10.5. In the design folder, look under lock precision. Okay, so here it is, Nuke Pro Max. Click open. Save that one. Sure, we'll save that. Okay, so here's the Nuke Pro Max. And the question was, he doesn't have any recommended motors right here. So under flight simulation, there's some motors, but there's no recommended motors. So here's an easy way to find out the recommended motors. You go to prepare for launch. When you do that, there's a button here called recommend motors. You click on that. And what it's going to do is it's going to go in the database and run simulations for every rocket in the database that we specify. And then it's going to do some checks on that and pick out the ones that are recommended. So I forget what diameter this is, 38 millimeter in diameter. So in 38 millimeter motors, there's probably over 100 different rocket motors, or a lot. And I don't want to run them all, so I'm going to sort them by manufacturer. So I'm going to use only the Aerotech motors. Instead of Aerotech and Cesaroni and Hypertech and Gorilla and Contrail, just Aerotech. And I'm going to say all the motors from Aerotech. This is a longer rocket, so I'm going to change the launch guide to a 6-foot long launch rod. And I'm going to use these weather conditions right here, 700-foot altitude and an 8-mile-an-hour wind. So that's a pretty good wind. And then we're going to use those recommended conditions and just click use those. And what it's going to do is it's going to run, it found 59 motors. And it's running through, and it's running simulations for all of them. So it ran them through the first time, and it didn't like a whole bunch of them. So it spit out maybe 21 motors that it didn't like already. And now it's rerunning them again to find the optimal delay for the motors that it does like. So this takes a little bit longer. This is why I didn't want to run all the motors from all the various manufacturers, because it's going to take a while, but you're going to get a list of all the motors that are recommended. Okay, it's getting close to done. We have, okay, a couple other questions come in. Okay, so once it's done running them, it will go from
whatever flight simulations to the recommended motor tab. It'll just automatically load them up. And you can see there's a whole bunch of motors here, and I'll just scroll through them really quick. But then you see that some of them are not recommended. And then it tells you the reason why. So for this particular motor right here, the I305, it doesn't like it because it says it's weathercocking too much. And it didn't, that one maybe looked like it went unstable because it failed at the 90-degree safety. So basically it said the rocket went 90 degrees like this, which means that probably went unstable. But it did find a bunch of recommended motors, and that's this column right here. And I sorted it by just clicking on it. So right now here's the not recommended ones. Here are the recommended ones. So the first one here is the G61. That will work. A G67, H73. Let's go see what some of these not recommended ones are. An H45. This one also says it went unstable. It could be depending on the weather conditions. You know, in lower wind speed, that might be a recommended motor, but in an 8-mile-an-hour wind speed, it says probably should stay away from that one. So getting a list of recommended motors took that much work. It's so simple in RockSim. In fact, that's what we use to create these motor charts. Although on this particular rocket, it depends on, we've been selling this rocket for a long time, so this might be an old chart. But in the past, we used to have to run these one at a time. Like it says the F10, do not use. Yeah, so G46, see now here it says the G, it's a Cicerone, but that should be pretty close to a G45. It says it goes really high too. A lot higher than 450 feet. Wait a minute, I'm looking at the wrong one. 2612, yeah. So that H motor went, it must have been horizontal, must be going horizontal because it's not going very high for an H motor. Yeah, and you can take a look at them. What you can do is select the motor. Let me select that one that went not recommended, and then do a right click and say load engines, and it will load the H45 in there. And then let's see what happens when we launch it. So parachute deployed Apogee. Yeah, let's just do that. Simulation, starting state. I think we had this at 60 inches. Launching straight up. Let's see the flight profile. Let's see what happens. Yeah, it didn't go very well. Didn't go very fast. But it went a lot higher. Yeah, so that went mostly okay. It's just for some reason when it ran that recommended motor, it didn't like it, which is totally, for some reason it thought it went unstable. Although here it's showing it as nice and stable. I really like that one because it went high and straight. Looks pretty good. So other questions. Carlos says, I am playing around with making photo etch parts. It is hard. In RockSim, imagine a 13mm rocket with an elliptical photo etch fin. What material, or do I just weigh them? Photo etch. What's you photo etching them out of plastic or copper or what? I would choose whatever material you're using. So if you go to the fin and you go to edit the fin, so right up here we have material. So if it was a plastic, I would choose maybe a plastic down here like polystyrene or polycarbonate, cellulose acetate. I have no idea what that is. But if it was a copper, you know, when I think of photo etching, I'm thinking like printed circuit boards, and those were always copper. You would have to add copper to the material database, and to do that, you go to the Rocket menu, go to Edit Database, Edit Materials, and then scroll through the list and see if copper is in here. There it is, copper, rolled copper. And then you have to tell it, okay, I can use this for fins. So here's the fin set column right here, and you have to change the 0 to a 1. So copper, edit, and then check the fin right there, and then done. And it changed it from a 0 to 1, and I go OK. And now if I come back to the fin set, I should see copper as a item. I'm not seeing copper as an item. It should show up here. Material. Just making sure it's not in the list somewhere that I'm not seeing. Okay, so why isn't that showing? Let's go back up here. Oops, cancel. Go to Rocket. Edit database, materials. Go back to the copper. Copper. That was rolled copper. Fin set. It is marked. That should be good. Let's mark it as body tube as well. Done. Click OK. Still not seeing it. Sometimes it puts things at the bottom, but I'm not seeing it down there either. I wonder if restarting will take care of it. Or closing this out. Let's open up a new Rocket. Lock Goblin. Save changes? No. Fin set. Material. Not there. Not down there. Let's cancel this. Save changes? No. I'm going to restart RockSim. Quit RockSim. Save my changes? No. Restart it while we're waiting. Floost says, hey Tim, I'm launching a rocket tomorrow. I'm not sure if my rail buttons are too close together. Will that be a problem? Typically no. The purpose of the buttons is to keep the rocket from rotating. So as long as it will slide along the rail easily, it should be fine. But usually the closer the buttons are together, the rocket might want to wiggle a little bit, and if it wiggles too much, it might lock itself into the rail, and then it doesn't want to move. So as long as it slides freely, I think you'll be fine. Fatbank says, how do you design the universal rail guides in RockSim? I would use a launch lug, just a regular launch lug. And then if you want to account for the extra drag, you just make your launch lug bigger in diameter. Let me go back to here, see if it restarting took care of any of the problems. Pro Max. It's still not seeing it. I have to try to figure that one out. Should be able to edit the database just fine. Okay. Anyway, let's see what we got going on here. Must be as close to 45 seconds as possible. So Art is still talking about the parachute descent. He's trying to get his upper stage to land at 45 seconds. Let's, I saved that one on my desktop. Let's open it up in the launch visualizer. New window. And we'll go to the RockSim.com website, and this is where the launch visualizer is. Let me log in as soon as it's done loading. Okay. All right, so it's done loading. Uploaded new design, and we're going to upload the one we just created with the two-stage. It was on my desktop. And let me do it by date modified. Research Express two-stage, click open, upload it. Okay, so there's the rocket sitting on the pad, and there's the separation line. We need to choose a launch site. So Art is somewhere in Texas, so why is it? There we go. Let's put in the word Texas. Tripoli, Northern Texas. Click OK. So we're going to choose a launch pad that's closer to Art. I don't know where this is. Might be Amarillo. As soon as it's done loading. It's running a little slow. There's lots of open area that there. Let me look at it in 2D. It looks like there's a house or barn right there. It kind of looks like, see this, that kind of looks like a grass runway for an airport, so maybe that's somebody's hangar. I'm just zooming out, trying to get the lay of the land here where we're located. Trying to find the nearest big city. Denton, okay, so that's near, I believe near Dallas and Fort Worth. Here's Fort Worth and Dallas is right there. So this is just northwest of Dallas. I think I told you my daughter is going to be going to University of North Texas, which is in that area somewhere. I'm not exactly sure what city. I'll know next year when I have to go there and drop her off. So maybe I'll get to fly at this launch site sometime. Go visit my daughter and go fly rockets with Texans. Okay, so rocket motor. We're not going to put anything in there. That's when we're going to choose an engine. And we want the Estes Where's the C6? C5, C6. Choose a 5-second delay. Click OK. So we put a motor in the bottom. And flight events. Okay, so we show a staging event at maximum ejection delay. We have in the booster stage, we have a parachute. We're going to do that max ejection delay. And in the upper stage, I think we had it set at Apogee. Okay, and then let's launch it and see what happens. You must select a sustainer motor before a simulation can be run. Okay, so here in the launch visualizer, it wants me to put a motor in this upper part. So we prepared for that. So if I go to choose engine, I need a fake motor, and I think I created a fake motor. Let's see. Let's show all engines. Come on, website. It kind of locked up on me. Let's exit the page. Snap. Something went wrong. Let's try it again. I already uploaded it, so that's the cool thing, is you can just reload. Loading. It's waiting. So it's either my internet connection is slow or this website's slow. I think it's the internet connection. Okay, so choose a design. I've already uploaded it. It already sees me in here because it's not showing the login button. Okay, so I just need to scroll down to the bottom because the new ones are down here. Select it. All right, let's load the motors again. Payload tube, choose engine. Show all engines. Maybe it's just the web server's being slow. Oh man, it's being slow. Let's see what other questions are going. I'll say wait this time. Mark for, Joe's high power rockets. When I was trying to do the copper, I forgot to mark it for rocketry use. Even though I marked it for fins, I still have to mark it for rocketry use. It's kind of like you have to double check it. Thank you, Joe. Terry Wheelock says, how do we do a design for a ram rocket? Okay. Let's go up here to search, if it will allow me to click on it. Terry's question. I don't know if I'm going to get to your question today, Terry, because we're already running low on time, but I think we might have talked about it. Go to the home page. Go to the RockSim Training Live, and this will give you a list of everything we talked about, but we want to search for a RAM rocket. So I'm going to do a Command F or Control F on Windows, and it will bring up a search bar here, and I'm going to say RAM. Okay, so in episode number 69, we did talk about designing a RAM rocket in RockSim. So if you come to this page, go to episode 69, you'll find it, then go to the YouTube video, and at 42 minutes and 33 seconds is where we talked about how to set that up. If we had more time, since we're already gone over an hour, I can't do it. And for some reason, okay, now I'm searching. Fake. Man, it's running really slow. I got the cursor there, but now it's not doing anything. Yeah, I know I created a fake motor and put it in there. I just don't remember what I called it. But the website's running slow. I think that's we got a Quest Micromax. That's the smallest. Oh, here we go. Dart. So this is a fake motor because I can tell it's fake because it has a total impulse of 0. So it doesn't have any thrust. And I can put that in the upper stage. And then in my booster stage, man, this is running slow. Choose an engine. I'm trying to run this as fast as possible. We won't be able to launch from Texas anymore because it's just taking too long. Maybe it's my internet connection. Wait for it. There it is. It's showing all engines. I only want to show the 18s. Come on, I clicked on it. Just waiting for it. There it goes. Okay. Here's this, the C6. Make it a 5. Click OK. Go back to the parachutes. This one has to be deployed Apogee. Now I think I can launch. Let's see what happens. Simulate. Is it going to show up? It's like it didn't run the simulation because this was a 2-stage, so it should show 2 engines loaded. So something's going on with the website. I have to check with the programmers, see what's going on. Why is it so slow? So I guess we've gone over an hour, so let me we'll have to conclude this, hopefully. Yeah, everything's like froze up. Yeah, it's like the screen is like my picture is not moving anymore. All right, well, there's me. Okay, hopefully next time it'll work better. Something's going on with technology today. There's a bunch of gremlins in the inside the computer that are doing weird things. So if this is going out, I'll see you next week, same time, 2 p.m. Mountain Time here in Colorado, 4 p.m. on the East Coast. Until that time, and we see each other, go out and launch something. So 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, ending the stream.